this is Nina. Welcome to NV Fine Art Studio. Today we are in Fitzroy, one of the oldest suburbs in Melbourne, and we will be doing an urban plein air watercolor sketch. It is raining today. It is a great subject for watercolor painting, but hard to achieve open air, so I will do it from my car. Car space, as we all know it, is very limited, but I have a small Etchr watercolor block and I think it would be perfect in this situation. I was approached by Etchr and asked if I use one of the products and give an honest opinion. When I realized I was sent a small block 20 by 20 centimeters of 50% cotton cold press watercolor paper, I got a little skeptical. I usually paint on at least a quarter sheet of 100% cotton paper with rough surface, but the staff from Etchr reassured me that they are very proud of their product, so I decided not to jump into any conclusions too quickly. Here it is. Let's open it and see how it looks and feels. This is the box. Here's the block. Again, it is protected with plastic from moisture getting in. This is definitely a good sign of quality. Let's open it. The first page is protected by black cover paper, which reminds me of Saunders Waterford blocks. It should be a little opening on the side to separate the pages from each other. Let's open it. This is the paper. Honestly, I'm quite surprised. It feels pretty good. The surface is more on the rough side. If you gave me this and asked if I think it's cold or rough, I'd say rough. I'm very happy about that. The pattern and the feel of the paper, soft and crisp at the same time, reminds me of Bao paper. Just a reminder that a block of paper means that all the sides are glued, so you can paint right away. You don't need a board or masking tape, and in theory it doesn't buckle. We can definitely look at this later, but first let's do a pencil sketch. Most of the sketch has been done now, just refining some details. So, I can definitely say it takes pencil nicely. I can erase things with a kneadable eraser without any issues. It doesn't look like it damages the paper in any way. I can do hatching, I can add darker values, and so far it's been really good. I didn't have a chance to look at the price of this paper, which is probably good. It doesn't affect my judgment, but so far it feels quality. Although we haven't touched the paints yet, of course. Who knows what's going to happen there. This is a rainy day scene, so I'm planning to do a few wet on wet tests, maybe a scratch and a washout. In my opinion, this is the ultimate test for watercolor paper. But this is later. For now, let's have a look at me adding darker values to the paper with pencil. I'm hatching a side of the windscreen of the car. The light is coming from the left and I can see that cars have this darker area on the right hand side of the windows. So I'm reflecting this on my sketch. As you can see, it looks good. When I erase, it removes the pencil marks, but the surface of the paper looks untouched. If it was damaged with the eraser, it would be indicative of very poor surface binders. Okay, the sketch is done. Let's proceed to the color. I'm going to pour some water into the container, pick up the brushes that I think I might need, a mop brush and a round brush for the larger wash, a synthetic with a good point for smaller shapes, and a liner or a rigger brush for the finer details. I'm going to start with the sky. I'm using a small squirrel mop brush. First, I'll do a warm wash to indicate a bit of evening sun coming through the rainy clouds. This is mostly dry brush marks. Now, I'm adding cool wash. This is to indicate the clouds. This is again mostly dry brush marks, and I'm taking this all the way down to the horizon. Basically, I'm pre-wetting this area to paint the background wet on wet. The background. I have changed the brush to a smaller Skoda Perla for smaller shapes in the background. I've done approximately half step thicker and darker mix. Let's drop this in. It spreads quite a bit. Let's do a darker mix for the area near the horizon so you can see the spread better. I would expect a slightly more contained spread, but nevertheless the paper and how it takes the moisture feels very good. I've painted this centerpiece building wet on dry with a coffee consistency mix, so theoretically it should dry pretty quickly, but I'm coming back with a dark mix to paint over this area and it's still fairly wet. I think I want to test on something else how long the paper stays wet. I'm painting the street shops now with a coffee consistency mixture. I'm telling you the mixture consistency so you know how much water is in the mix, so you can approximately know how your paper that you used to would perform in this instance. I'm going to leave it for a few minutes and paint a few details on the focal building, and then come back to the shops and add a darker value wet on wet. It would be really good if it's still wet enough for this when I come back. Here I am preparing a milk consistency dark value for the shops. It looks good. Let's drop this in. Oh wow, this is good. It's still very wet. I know it's winter and it's rainy day and the air is moist, but still it is very good for a 50% cotton paper. The only thing that bothers me is how much spread and bloom I get. I'll say it again that I would prefer a more contained edge of wet on wet. It starts to look a little messy here. Let's paint the water reflection. I think it would be the ultimate test of the wet on wet edge. I'm pre-wetting the paper with water, not too much, just what this little more brush can hold. Then, while I'm making a mix for the reflection, this water should absorb into the paper and get to the what we called controlled wet on wet stage. My mix is ready. This is a milk consistency mixture. I'm expecting a nice controlled soft edge here, a bokeh effect type of edge. Wow, this blooms. It spreads quite far. Let's paint one more layer over the shops. I'm wondering if it's still wet. I'm surprised. It's still wet, but the edge is actually much nicer. This is amazing how long the paper stays wet. But again, the edge situation definitely bothers me when it's just pre-wetted, like you see at the bottom of the shops. Now I'm going to test the dry brush marks with a thicker mixture. I'm using a soft small mop and a cream consistency mix and quickly move my brush against the surface. This is really good. I love this effect. I think I expected this just by looking at the surface and the texture of the paper. Definitely a thumbs up for the texture from me. Now let's spray this with water and see how the paper with paint reacts to it and what effect it makes. It is a little patchy and bloomy, but still very good. The last thing that I want to do is to drop a bright paint wet on wet and see if it blooms like that again. Sometimes it is paint and not the paper that does the blooms, and I know that cadmium red doesn't do these blooms, so let's try cadmium red. It looks a little bloomy on the left hand side, but okay on the right hand side. So I think I'm ready for the conclusion. This is definitely a really good paper. I cannot say it will substitute the 100% cotton, but for 50% cotton it is exceptional. Honestly, I have not seen anything better in this quality range. It is great with pencil, it is very consistent with watercolor from top to bottom, from left to right. It holds the paper moist for a long time. The only minus is that it blooms and the wet edge is a little too rough and unpredictable for my taste. Maybe I had to wait for a little longer to put the paint in to get more controlled edges, but nevertheless, I'm sure there are plenty of painting styles out there who would exploit this quality with joy. This is all for today from me. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, please like, subscribe and leave a comment. If you have any experience with this paper, I would love to hear from you. Please leave your comments down below. I will be looking forward to seeing you in my future videos. Bye!